cord up here.
There you go. Okay. Yep. Got it.
All right. Well, this whole last 5 weeks we have gotten together. We've been talking a lot about communication, and we've been trying to find out what it is that causes us to have problems when we're trying to communicate with our spouses, when we're talking to our children, or if we're talking to the just our extended family. Sometimes we have difficulties, and the things that we say can cause people to react and sometimes get angry. Things happen that we didn't mean, and then all of a sudden we're wondering, what happened? I didn't mean that, or I wonder if that's what they meant. And people get upset, and then they might go and they might pout. They may not be able to talk to you for a while, and go, with kids, they'll go and slam a door sometimes. And so what we're trying to decide is what causes that to happen, what kind of a trigger that sets off, so that we can try to understand more about our own way of communicating, and with those that we are trying to communicate with, to understand what words that we say can cause them to feel hurt or angry, upset, and then what words that we need to be careful that we change them so that we don't end up setting off alarms all the time. One of the problems that we have when we have special needs children is that it's harder for us to communicate sometimes, especially when it first happens, because we go and get a diagnosis we don't understand. The doctor may not know much about what he's telling us is wrong either. And so then we don't know what to expect. We don't know what's going to happen, what kind of experiments, or I hope you're not going to experiment, but what kind of uh, exercises, therapies, medication, what is there that can happen that can change the situation that your child is in. Now, for us with cerebral palsy, there were some changes that we had to go through with some surgeries, but every time we were in the hospital, we would find it very difficult to talk to doctors. In fact, they ignored a lot of things that we would tell them. And so those were triggers for us because we knew that they weren't listening to us or they weren't communicating. And so we felt hurt, we felt left out. We could watch other kids being treated, and we didn't understand what was going on. But with families, many times parents end up getting a diagnosis, and then all of a sudden they feel guilt. They start blaming each other. They blame the doctor. They start wondering, why me? Why did this happen? And there are all kinds of things that go through people's heads when they first get these diagnoses. So what we want to do is to try to make that something we're going to work on. So let's go back and kind of look at some of the things we've talked about so far. What's a trigger? Well, when you look at this, you actually start looking at the pictures and you think, oh, what a happy time. So if you were to say, oh, happy birthday to somebody, what kind of a trigger would that bring about? Deb, you're on there. Can you unmute? Tell me a little bit about what these pictures look like for you.
Well, these look happy ones, but sometimes birthdays aren't happy occasions for people. Could be a whole variety of reasons. So it can trigger happiness, and that's what you hope. That's a real desired outcome. But I like sometimes I don't like to celebrate my birthday on my birthday. It just seems like bad things happen on my birthday, on the actual day. So I like to celebrate on other days. Those kind of things. So it's a whole, it's different triggers, could be triggering positive or negative, and it can be the whole spectrum, because some people really hate getting older. And then like kids, I mean, they're counting every half year. I'm 1.5 or 3.5, 4.5. And we seem to do that as we're older. Yeah, my dad's 96.5, right? But
That's
it kind
true.
of comes around, but you just don't know. You cannot assume. I think maybe that's what you're doing, because triggers can incite all kinds of emotions, full range.
It's funny that you said sometimes birthdays can trigger thoughts that we didn't expect. I got a card in the mail yesterday, and you may not be able to see it, but it says, "Happy birthday, Cheryl." And it's from a friend. It's my half birthday.
Oh,
She knew when I became part of a group, send out cards. And she sent me a card to say it's my half birthday. And I was not expecting it. I don't think I've ever gotten one before that was a half birthday. But for me, I like birthdays. And I don't mind saying how old I am because I think it's great that I can celebrate as long as I do, because many times people can't. And that's one of the things that brings about a happy memory for me. But
I love I love birthdays too because it's a blessing you were born. We wouldn't know each other if you weren't born, so I always celebrate birthdays of everybody else.
well, and I do too. I love doing that. But what does this look like? What does this picture look like here? Looks like she's got her arms folded. And we talked about how communication is not just verbal, it's also
Yeah.
our body language.
Body language. Yeah.
Yes. And her body language to me, look at the frown she's got on her face and her
Some
arms
people have
folded.
resting faces like that, but yes, and they're proud of it, which is funny to me, but that's a whole nother subject. But yeah, she looks really um, upset.
Right. And then a fist in the air. Sometimes people do that because they're mad. Sometimes they're doing it in a protest. Sometimes they're doing it because they really are going to hit somebody. But it brings about an ugly thing to me. It's not a happy thing to see somebody bring their fist up in the air. But you can see already that it's not just verbal words. It's not just that triggers us. And what it's doing is actually causing our emotions to exhibit what we're feeling inside. And that depends on what happened in our past. Because sometimes when we are looking at somebody's expression, it can remind us of something that was either good or something that was really a terrible thing that I don't want to remember anymore. And so when we have an expression on our face that can actually bring about that kind of reaction, it could be that it wasn't what we said, but what was happening in somebody else's mind. So what can we do about those kind of
And
situations?
before we move on, I just want to say, to me, the big misunderstanding, especially with autistic kids, is they have all this when things aren't normal. People come up with all these different ways to try to do it. And in writing the book that I did, mine was trying you go through love to get people to a happy place, even if they are upset. But what I also heard that autistic kids were being told is to clench their fist and growl if they were angry. And I thought, what sense does that make? Because they might have been trained to do that. And then think of them in their 20s or whatever doing that would be a huge threat to other people. And so they are also misinformed, that they generate those emotions because they are so misinformed.
And that's a great point, because we are actually training our children from the time they're little how to react to expressions we make, words, the tone of voice that we use. If we can say something in an ugly voice, I really like the way you look today. And you're going to say, I don't believe that. That didn't make me feel good about the way I looked. But we can also say, I really hate what you did today. And if we do that, I've seen that happen with animals, and they'll just love on you and they'll think you're saying good things because the tone of voice to them made them feel good and comfortable. And they're thinking, oh, this is a wonderful thing, even though you may be saying something that's not
Horrible.
really good. So we have to be careful with what we say, and then what does it sound like? And then what kind of a body language are we presenting to others? Why is communication so important? And I think this little picture's covering up some of that, but I love these pictures of birds, and I like the one down at the bottom where they're actually kissing each other. And instead of having real people on there, I decided I would just use some of these pictures because they were so cute. But why is communication so important?
Yeah,
What is it?
it governs just about our entire day, whether we're communicating to ourselves or we're communicating with others. It can send the whole range of possibilities that you're sending, and then the receiver, you already mentioned, Cheryl, the receiver may um, think that's bad when in fact it's good, or it's good when in fact it's bad, like the dog. But it is the way that we influence others and we connect with others. It's how we connect with others.
Well, and also it's a way of expressing our feelings. It's a way that we tell others, what's happening inside of our world, in our heads. It's also, we get to share good news. We also share sorrows. We use communication in business. We use it every day. We use it everywhere. We communicate with God even if we aren't saying something out loud. This is something that we can't do without. And it's one of the things that with people who are unable to verbalize how they're feeling, I really struggle trying to understand, because I don't want them to feel like nobody cares and nobody's going to pay attention. One thing that happened when our son was only about 5 or 6 years old, there was a teacher that said, "He never gets listened to, does he?" And I went, "What?" "Yes, he does. We work on that all the time." And she said, "Well, he acts like he's not going to have to answer anybody." So I started thinking about, where are we that people would not expect to hear him say anything when they talk to him? And I realized that when we're in a big crowd of people, if somebody walks by in a hurry and they go, "Hi, Blake," they may be way past him before he ever gets the words "hi" out. And I thought, they keep going because they're not expecting him to answer. Very few people would stop. And I remember when he was just a little boy in a stroller before he was ever in a wheelchair, and these old women at church would get down on their knees to look him in the eye and to talk to him. And I thought, how wonderful is that they cared that much about communicating with him, so that he was able to know that people loved him and that they cared about him. And even though he was a little bitty boy, as we were driving up to a church building, his legs would start kicking and he would just get to hollering. And he was so happy because he knew he was going to be somewhere that people did love him. And that's amazing. So if you're around somebody that does not have very good communication skills, and it may be that it's an older person that you're around, it could be a parent that's lost the ability, or it could be that you have somebody in the family who's not able to speak. They may not have hearing, and so they don't understand, or if they don't hear well, their language is often difficult to understand. But for whatever reason it is, this is why we need to stop, pay attention to each other, and really try to understand what someone is trying to communicate, even if it's through body language, sign language, using a keyboard, whatever it is. We need to just learn that communication is that important.
Well, and your lovely story about the church. I mean, it's a kindness, it's a love that you convey, and everybody senses it, no matter where you are in life and what abilities you have. I think that comes through all the time. And your example of him kicking his legs, absolutely, you get that because there's at least one person who has kind and taken the time to pay attention and convey an energy to them, not just words, but the energy and the attention. Um, and so often they get sidelined because the people who don't recognize it as normal, they just choose to think they can't understand you, like they're stupid. And that has been, we know this across the board, yet people still do it. And like
That's
I
right.
said, there was in the previous one session we did, someone wrote a young lady wrote a book, and she didn't even be able to communicate until her 20s using an iPad, not verbally, because that's may not be possible. And she remembered everything that everybody ever did in her entire life. And she wrote it down. So you want to think about that and stop, this thing about dismissing people. And you said it, just pay attention. And it's so important.
I am sorry that my PowerPoint slides don't do the animation that I had on here, but it said that it wasn't able to save it if I use that. But I had this little screen where when this guy was talking to this one, this little guy would turn around and not look at him. So I want to go back to that. What happens when somebody says to you, it's all your fault? Well, that's going to make you really freeze up, or you come back in anger. You're trying to defend yourself. And so those are words that we want to avoid doing. And if you talk to your children in a way that is loud and angry, you're calling them names, and especially if you're in a grocery store or somewhere, don't go shouting at your kids where everybody in the store is going to hear what you're saying to them. Respect them enough to be able to talk to them in a quiet voice and to be able to get them to understand what you're saying, but not in an ugly way and not calling somebody names. Be able to carry on a conversation and not associate the person with the behavior when you're saying you're so bad or you're so ugly or you're so whatever it is. It's not them. Their behavior may be bad, but we still have a person there. You need to protect that shell of a person so they don't feel beaten down all their lives. Those are the kind of people that either become bullies or they are being bullied because they've learned to be quiet and let somebody talk ugly to them. Neither one of those are good choices. We want to be able to stand up and to be able to speak to each other in a way that's not going to drag somebody down, or it's not going to make them feel like I could crawl under this bus out here and nobody would miss me, or feel like you've been run over. How we talk to others is just very, very important. And this makes me think too about the fact that kids are being bullied. You need to know what's happening when your children are not around you. You need to be able to spend that time when they come home from school and ask them, what happened today? How did it go? What was something good that happened? And then what was something that didn't go so well? And find out if something is inside of them they don't want to say, because they may not want to tell you that somebody's picking on them. But to be able to have a relationship with each other so you can say, well, I felt so bad because this happened to me. And then help them say, okay, what are some other ways that you could deal with that? And if you have to, go to school and talk to the people about how are you teaching our children in a way that they're going to be safe, and they're safe in their own skin and not feel like they're threatened every time they walk in the door.
And I encourage people to go back to previous discussions that you've had in this series, because you already talked about that Blake would act out in school in ways, and you could pinpoint it to who he was around. And
Right.
the only way he could, because some of the kids, if they have autism or they have other challenges, is they have a limited set of what to do, because that negative energy is going to go somewhere. It's either they're going to implode or explode. And so, yeah. And when it goes bad, it's like point the finger back at yourself, because half the time or most of the time it's you.
That's right. And, there are situations in our schools now too that are very dangerous. When our daughter was in the 6th grade, she decided she was going to play the cello. Well, she comes out with a big bass, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how are we going to carry that thing around? Well, it was so big, it had to go across all the seats in a van. Well, when she would get out to go into the school building, I would literally have to sit there and watch to make sure she was safe, because there were so many kids that were ugly about how they were blocking doors and they were trying to pick a fight with kids. And so I'd have to make sure she was safe. Now, she was perfectly able to take care of herself, and yet I was watching her to make sure she was safe. When it's somebody who cannot take care of themselves, by all means, make sure they're safe, that they're being treated right, because I've talked to parents who found out that their kids are being treated for ADD or ADHD when really it was because of the way they were treated in school by teachers. They were having their papers ripped up and they were told that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen, or something that affects them for years to come. We don't need that kind of environment for our kids. So we need to be careful about what we're letting them be exposed to, and make sure as parents we're bold enough to go in and to find out what's happening here. I was talking to somebody just today, and she was saying that when their son was in school and the teacher wasn't very nice to him, he wouldn't come home and tell her. And finally she got a note from the principal and says, we're having a problem with him at school. So the parents go in, they sit down with the principal, and he says, well, now this is what's happening. And the mom looked at him and said, have you met our son? Well, no, I haven't really met him. And she said, then I don't think you really need to be telling us what he's like, because what you're describing is not him at all. So something else is going wrong. Well, it was the teacher. And the teacher was telling the principal, get the parents in here because they got to correct this kid. And really, he was being mistreated in a classroom. It doesn't have to be just a special needs child that you have to look after. These are your children. These are our precious gifts. And it's up to us as parents to make sure the conversation is good no matter where they are. And I think that's one thing that COVID helped us to see, that everything wasn't as good as what we thought, because we basically weren't paying attention sometimes to what was going on. Kids were dropped off at school, they were picked up, and if they didn't tell you what was going on, you didn't know. And it's the kids that end up doing the shootings or doing different things have got something else going on in there. And as parents, we need to be aware of what is going on and who our kids are with and what they're getting into and what kind of situations that they're doing when we're not around, and make sure that we're aware of that. Not because we're going to chew them out, but because we're going to help them change that behavior and change the way they talk to you, the way they talk to their friends, the way they talk to adults, to learn to respect authority. We've lost that in our country. We need to go back to saying, this is an older person. You need to have respect for them when they're speaking. Or this is a teacher. This is a policeman. This is somebody that's a first responder. We need to respect these people for putting their lives on the line. And that's part of what's gone wrong in our society, is letting people get away with saying ugly things, and then it escalated into bad behavior until it became violent behavior. And now people just drive away or walk away from somebody that's in harm's way because they don't feel very involved. We need to understand that life is precious and that you and I have a responsibility to each other, even if we're not related, to make sure that each other is safe and well cared for and not being attacked when they're at school. And this makes me think of another situation too. Sometimes when kids are in a classroom or they're in the lunchroom, if somebody starts having a seizure or something happens, I've heard that kids will try to go around them and watch and laugh and make fun because they think it's a funny joke. Teach your children that's not funny, and help them to be able to say, look, guys, we need to move away. Give them air and let somebody that's an adult take care of this situation, because that's part of how we're communicating how we feel about each other and what's happening in our world. It's very important. I got to move along here, don't I? How we handle triggers is what we've talked about for all of these 5 weeks in the past. So during these 6 weeks, we've discussed a lot of things that have happened in classroom situations with teachers, with doctors, being in the hospital. We've talked about with extended family. We've talked about husband and wife relationship. And so I would encourage you, if you're interested in being able to go back and listen to those, these courses are going to be online before too long. And I'll be posting where you can get access to those as soon as they give us the word that they're out there. They're planning on having some of these on a television program that you might be able to tune into, but we will be having more of these discussions as we go along. But let's think a minute. Who are the ones that you feel like you're triggered the most? And I've written down a lot of different people out there, including the bullies that our kids may struggle with. In fact, a lot of times we're going to have problems with extended family, our in-laws, people that really may have a lot to say about how you're taking care of your child when they may not really understand anything at all. They may not understand that just because you don't offer them a drink in public, maybe because they're not able to drink like that. They can't swallow good. They can't get to a water fountain and you don't have cups around. There could be a lot of reasons why you don't do something the way other people would do their own children. But we need to be able to think about the ones that trigger us the most. What is it that they tend to say to us that we can have in our arsenal of thinking, okay, the next time that happens, here's what I would like to respond with, and think through the things that maybe trigger us to get angry, how we can respond in a way that will diffuse that anger. And even if it's, well, I'd rather not talk about that right now and change the subject or just walk out of the room, something that would keep the conversation from becoming violent or from somebody saying something they're really going to regret later. We've talked about our medical personnel. We've talked about when somebody is in the hospital. Are your children treated differently when they're in a hospital than what you see other people being treated? Do you see your parent not being cared for? If there is someone in the hospital and you don't feel like they're getting the kind of attention that they need, learn how to speak up and to say, they've been pushing the button a lot and they're not getting help, but they really need to go to the bathroom and they can't wait that long. What can we do that would help you to know this is an emergency? We need help right now. And I think when you talk to them about some of those situations in a kind way, that they'll be more cooperative. And after all, that's what we want. But when they're in a nursing home or if a child is in a residential situation, a group home, we don't have control over a lot of things that happen and we don't always know what's going on. So pop in and out. Don't let them know when you're coming. Make surprise visits. Don't let them know when you're coming, because if they do, they'll change behavior. They'll look different. They'll treat your child different. But when you make a surprise visit, you'll find out a lot more about what's really going on. And I have a friend in the hospital right now, or in the nursing home, and somebody goes in to see about her to make sure she's bedfast. She can't tell them what she needs anymore. And they'll tie something on the gown that she's in to make sure they can go back and check, was she changed? Or is she in the same clothes she was in before? Have they changed the sheets? By just making a little, tucking it in a little bit different way so that they don't know that you're checking it. But there are ways that you can find out what's going on and how they're taking care of people that you love. Then the educators, we've talked about that several times, and we've talked about it tonight. We want to make sure that things are going right and that our kids are being treated right. And if they're not, it's time for you to stand up and to see what's happening and what needs to be changed there. And then if your kids are in sports, if they can participate, what is it that they can do? I know there was one little girl and she was not able to do very much, and they never did know exactly what was wrong, but the doctor had said she acts more like she's had a stroke before she was born. Well, she was behind in mental capacity and in a lot of the education situations, but one of the coaches said, come on and run with us during after school practice. And when she did, she found she loved to run. Well, she was so good at that that every year she was in there with the kids that were actually doing it to compete in the sports, but she would do it with them. And guess what? She got to represent her state in the Special Olympics by running years later, going over to Greece. And I mean, it's amazing. What can your kids do if they are not included? Find a way to help them be included. And if you've never seen Special Olympics, the little Special Olympics that the kids have while they're in the elementary schools, or if they're doing it with the kids that are in group homes, or if they're doing, anywhere that they're doing some of these, go watch and help them with it. And you'll be surprised at how wonderful the things can be, because you'll watch how excited the kids are. And I'll tell you a story about that if we have time at the end of this, but we just want to make sure that any barrier that is keeping them from being able to be a participant, to be included, that we as parents go in and say, he really is good at throwing the ball at home. Is there any way we could let him do this as a sport with other kids? Even if they get ribbons just for participation when they are not able to do a lot of other things, those ribbons mean a whole lot. It's not the same as when you just make everybody feel like they're all the same, and we're dumbing down America because we don't want anybody to feel bad. But when your kids have disabilities of any kind and they're not able to compete with other kids, find ways that they can excel and do something that they enjoy. And if it's watching sports and they learn all about it, I've seen some kids that they were like the Rain Man. They were savant and they could remember everything that happened. In fact, there's a little boy that's on TV and he's about 9 years old. And that kid can get on there on an interview and he can tell you everything that happened in the ball games, who played what and what the statistics were, and give you play by play on everything that happened. There's something that everybody can learn how to do. Let's just look for the things they can do and not focus only on things that are what they are not able to do. And let's try to help our teachers find those things when they're doing those IEP meetings too, and say, we've worked on this for 2 or 3 years now. Why don't we try something else instead? And it'll be a change in conversation at that table, I can guarantee you.
We've got
Traveling is
2 minutes left.
Go back. Okay, what?
We've got about 2 minutes left, 2 minutes,
Right.
20.
One of the things that we have also found that's difficult for parents with special needs kids is being able to accommodate our kids when they're in wheelchairs or they have special equipment, because sometimes the hostesses on the planes don't understand and they're trying to get everybody in a hurry, trying to get a plane to leave in a hurry. And they're not very kind. They expect people to speak up and speak loud. They're not always able to do that. Traveling is very difficult with people, and even on cruise ships, there are a lot of people that are older. They're walkers, wheelchairs, and they're struggling to get by. Watch your conversation when you're in public. Treat people with kindness and not get where you're in such a hurry that you're shoving through and trying to make everybody else get out of your way. And then learn how to stop just reacting to things, or cause your children just to go, oh, here we go again. And if they are having problems being tested at school, talk to the people that are doing the testing and say, is this really a good test for them when they can't speak, when they're nonverbal, or when they are unable to express themselves, or they don't have the language that the test is written in? Maybe we need to have them understand that that child needs a tutor. They need someone that can help them in there. But slow down when you are trying to talk to them yourself, and don't react right off. Learn how to ask a few questions and then be able to go back and say, I think that we need to just understand what was being said and ask them more questions and see if they will talk to you a little bit more. I'm going to stop right here so that they can actually do the editing. And so let me
Do you
turn.
have something you were going to offer us?
Yes, but I'll come back in a minute. We'll come back on. Let me go off and back on. It'll stop. Stop the video. Should have stopped it earlier.